welcome to the next episode of Kranimus, episode 4, and also next episode before I shave. That was important. So, this episode is, I promised you last episode that we would move on to the deep end of starting to get into the theory, but I think there's one more thing that we need to cover. Something pretty important to Kranimus philosophy. And this will have to do with some of the values that we declare in this theory, and of course in this approach of life. So I'm going to begin with talking about universal compassion, and I'm going to make the argument off the bat that I think that it is kind of what gives us our humanity, our compassion. We have compassion for all kinds of things. We have it for animals. We have it for inanimate objects that somewhat resemble an adorable nesting doll, right? And so it's quite the thing. It breeds all kinds of spandrels, and I think that it's wonderful. So universal compassion is something I first heard of in Buddhism, Zen Buddhism. However, there are these branches of Buddhism, and so there's a lot to explore in regards to one of the most compassionate and one of the most loving human-centered religions and life-centered religions, I mean to say, because it's not just about humanity, right? It's about life on earth, life in general. Quite the thing to celebrate. So compassion is, so important. And there's a difference between universal compassion and infatuation, which would be falling in love, limerence, those feelings, that wonderful dopaminergic serotonin, oxytocin response of the brain where everything's great and we love someone more than we love our mothers, and it's also not the kind of love where you are constantly worrying about someone, and if they disappoint you, then you are going to disown them as your child. It is a love without that kind of attachment, without that kind of expectation, and it's a love without the extreme fantastical experience. It's something more grounded. It's something based in peace, something based in respect, and something far more deep, far more accepting of the person and aware of the person, who they are, and less to do with with us and our feelings, and more to do with that peaceful energy. And so universal compassion, it is conditionless in the sense that even if a person does something very terrible, even if they start going down a road that we can no longer support and we can no longer be in their life for, we still can appreciate them as a person and their human potential. And if there's something we do, we might want to do it, And so, to help them. And so, it's this thing where you're recognizing their humanity. And so I think it has to do with that common humanity. What do we all have in common? What are our universal human needs? One of the things that can be difficult for people, I think, is in wanting to believe in a bad guy. And you can see this all over our media, of course, all over our entertainment. We need a bad guy. That gray area makes life far more confusing if you're just trying to take judging of character. If you're trying to make a good judge of character, essentially, and instead of going into the nuance of the complexity of human emotion, human intention, things like that, and trust, how we can trust people. So if you're just trying to get a clear and simple answer, this person is a psychopath. This is a bad person. This is a person born of sin. And you see, when you have that inherent evil labeled on someone, when their family makes them a certain way, then it makes it simple, and it makes it unethical, and it makes it monstrous, because, you can start labeling people, a whole group of people, and yada, yada. And so universal compassion is about human potential, ex plecto, it's about human emotion and who we all are on the inside and our universal needs and feelings. That would be demotion and, universal respect, right? Region, all of these things. And so it's essential to life philosophies, religions, and it's I think it's kind of an essential thing to place at the center of your life, and love, of course, has to do with forgiveness, and it has to do with and has to do with some of these cycles of how we treat people and some of the things we do, and that we can describe that as love as well. There's, of course, the love languages, which I've mentioned before, but compassion, of course, is just crucial to our relationships. It's crucial to our happiness, and it's crucial to have for ourselves. I think that Western culture has a very deep underpinning of guilt leading to these self-hatred types of mentalities and self-deprecative humor, something that we don't often talk about, at least that I see in the spheres that I'm paying attention to. I don't see it talked about nearly enough. Why are we so, and of course it makes sense, all these, the starving African child, and all these reasons that we should feel bad, and all the reasons that we're privileged. However, I think it's crucial to say not whether you're privileged, but what you're going to do with it. I think that should be the question, because if you're saying, you're privileged and you should feel bad, well, then you've just disabled that person. If they play along with it, you've just disabled them from using their privilege, using the things that they have gotten in their luck, and equalizing the best they can, So universal compassion, cornerstone of everything that makes us human and in our humanity, right? So next topic I want to start to divulge into is accountability. Accountability is a tricky one. I actually just dealt with some serious problems with that in my own life here. Very intense when you're living with people when it happens. And accountability is a very deep and complex thing, and I think that there's a lot of different directions we can take it. But when you keep it simple and you have a grounding rod, that makes it a lot easier. In this case, the grounding rod choice for me are the approaches of virtues, integrity, trying to circle back around to check those, and then nonviolent communication as an implicit process. When I say implicit, I mean that this NVC thing Marshall Rosenberg devised, it's a beautiful process, but it's not necessarily good for everyday life, casual conversation. It's not necessarily good for the way that he intended it, I believe, which is to use in our conversations. And it's wonderful in very serious situations, for example, conflict resolution between nations, and conflict resolution in violent situations, and very, very, so it's essential in that way. But when it comes down to our everyday lives, I believe that this is something that should be studied, MVC, and it should be embodied, and it should be understood on a deeper level and incorporated into our language and into our understandings and into our things. So NVC, it's all about accountability. It's all about self-responsibility. It's all about speaking from the heart and listening and some of these things. And the process goes like this: someone breaks your beautiful flower vase, and you're like, bruh, you're a fucking dick. Something you'd never say in MVC. Bruh, you made me feel, you're making me angry. You also would never assign responsibility to someone else for your feelings, right? If you're speaking giraffe, as Marshall called it. And so the first step would be to identify exactly what happened. Okay, so observation. And so this happened, when you broke my flower vase, right? No room for confusion there. I felt, okay, ownership of my feelings. And I felt confused, and I felt frustrated. And I feel confused, and I feel frustrated. And I'm needing, third step is needs. I'm needing some understanding. Not, I need you to understand me. That is when you give someone else responsibility for your needs, right? Which of course we can take on, and it's a wonderful thing. But it's something that we can take on, not something that we should give out. We should not be giving out our quota of fulfillment to other people to fulfill without their explicit written consent. Right? And so needs. I'm needing some understanding, and I'm needing some clarity. I need clarity. I need understanding as a human being. These are my needs, not you owe me them. Right? And finally, request. And the request has to be practical. It can't be please respect me more, because that's vague, and it's also it's all got all kinds of implicities, as in you're not respecting me now, etc. in the future, or even saying in the future. So a practical request: could you please buy me a new flower vase to make up for this one? Yeah. And that makes it simple. You're not putting a lot of responsibility on this person for the way that you feel, the things that you have, but you're connecting with them, and you're showing them how it made you feel. And you're giving them a chance to connect with you and to decide on their response accordingly. Well, as Marshall Rosenberg called criticism and labeling people and saying you're a fucking dick, a tragic expression of unmet needs. And as I would interpret it, it's a terrible strategy to get what we want, right? It's a terrible strategy for diplomacy. When you start, when someone does something that frustrates you, and you start calling them things, and you start, evaluating them in ways that you probably will regret later, or, telling them what they are, and these sorts of things, instead of identifying what's happening for you. And as a side note, we didn't even used to have this in our language. I know this video is getting long, but in so many languages, we don't even have labels to people of permanence. We have "you're with asshole," not "you are one." And so that distinction is such a huge part of the violence in our language. So when we come back to accountability, it can be very tricky. It can be very difficult to. So I use NVC as a grounding rod to return to in times of strife, and NVC, and trying to understand and using it within yourself is important too. How do I feel? What happened? What am I needing? What can I do about this? What can I request that I do? And then we have things like integrity. Okay, so responsibility for what you're doing. What are my intentions? How do I want to treat people universally? Did I do that? Did I treat this person how I want to treat people? I know this about this person. This person is sensitive. If I tell them they're a bad liar, they may take that very personally. I know this about this person, and I still said the thing, And so, obviously, if someone starts crying when you tell them they're a bad liar, maybe there's a little sensitive, whatever. But you still said the thing, and you still know the person, right? And so we need to start taking responsibility of the things that we're doing, the things that we're saying, and so many people, understand this. I'm making very broad generalizations as a cultural insight that we kind of need to regurgitate. That's such a weird word for that. And so accountability, we've got to be able to say, I did this and you did this, and we've got to be able to take control of our story. And this comes down to, and this comes down to our story. This comes down to other people's story, and this comes down to our life story. This comes down to situational stories. And so being able to be free of doubt and in regards to doubt where we're not getting anywhere. It's just doubt, period. But doubt is wonderful. We can use it practically to understand something. Oh, maybe I'm not right about this. Maybe I did something wrong. Maybe I need to rethink this. Maybe I need to. Oh crap! I messed up, and I'm so sorry. Things like this. Our story is so important to be able to flesh out, and the story that we're telling about ourselves can quite literally shape it. A lot of people like to believe in this law of attraction, where what we sort of think about and what our energy is moving us towards will make it happen. Okay. There's many, we don't know so much about reality. However, what we can say, I think, is that what we're sort of aware of, and what our intentions are, and what we're sort of trying to get towards, and what we're telling ourselves, what we're thinking, absolutely shapes our reality and our perception of our reality, and what we end up able to do and able to get to. If we tell ourselves that I am depressed, I am a wretched human being, and our story about ourselves is crucial. And I am so impoverished, I am broken from my experiences. There's no hope for me, and if we start to tell ourselves these kinds of things, then we kind of disable ourselves via. And here's the thing, we just may not know a better way, or it might be scary to actually reinvent our story. And that is where it's so helpful to do things like art and writing, and literally just to write out your life story and start to clarify things, and art to express how you feel and to finally hear yourself, because so often we wait to, for that one to hear our feelings, I think, and we don't necessarily hear ourselves. We don't keep rapport with our own emotions and our own experience. And this ties, of course, back into accountability in regard to how do you want to come off with people? Where do you want to be? Do you want to be this leaky faucet of emotional distress? And of course, this is a part of human beings. You give other people an opportunity to be there for you, and it's wonderful. However, when we are conscious of ourselves, when we are thinking with intention, right? Who do you want to be with people? Who are you? You know? And so that comes down to our story, and that comes down to a lot of things, and the conduct that we want to hold, the peace that we want to have within, the things we want to do for people. And it can be very difficult to distinguish one boundary in particular, and that is the boundary between, should we give this person space to go through what they're going through? Should we give this person space in general? Or should we intervene? Interventions, ethical gray area. And of course, just saying, "Oh, you're coming with me today. Get in the car, we're going." If someone is just so habitually stuck in their ways and they really needed that, and they're just going to keep doing what they're going to doing, So is that not respecting their boundaries, or is it being such a good friend? And it depends on the context in so many ways, right? And you just got to think it through and remember what your intentions are, right? And it's not going to ruffle up your life so much as long as you remember your grounding rods, right? And for me, that's did I live up to the integrity that I was trying to live up to, and I was trying to live by with this person? Did I give them the respect that they needed? Did I give them the boundaries? Did I treat them with the compassion and the patience that I would want to? And of course NVC, and trying to understand, what happened here. If you ever get to a conflict, where does the responsibility lie, and where are we trying to move forward to? Sometimes it's good to understand the past of someone and talk about the past and reinvent the story. Sometimes you're not going to get anywhere doing that first, and so you need to start, hug it out, or you need to, start talking about the future, and remember that you're on the same team. There's different approaches, different strategies to conflict resolution, and with regards to accountability. But if you have your grounding rods, you have your lifestyle that you feel you're taking responsibility of, intention with, and all of these types of things, then I think that it's really quite liberating. As someone who grew up in Western culture, we have, it's brutal. This video is getting very long, so I'm going to cut it short. But first, I would like to introduce you to Professor Mugglestort, and Mugglestort is a wonderful human being. That is all.